Okay, in this assignment, or sorry, in this video, I'm going to explain your writing assignment pretty quickly, just to go over the instructions that you have in your course outline. So this concept is about sovereignty, and sovereignty really historically has always been thought of either in religious terms or as belonging to the king or queen. So that's why you see the Burger King, whatever this thing, crown there. Um, and what you see there underneath it is an intersectional model, so showing you how things have become more complicated than that, obviously, than the times of the gods or the kings and queens. So this is about what your theory of postmodern sovereignty is, not what you're able to copy and paste from the internet. And these will be pretty obvious to me because the one coming from you should be built from the ground up and not the other way around. So you really need to come up with examples and quotes from your readings, and then I'm seeing whether you can put that together to try to explain essentially who should be most important in that structure. I do want to just take a second. If you look over on the right hand side, look at this image that I've made. Right now, one of the reasons why we're looking at postmodern sovereignty as opposed to pre-modern or modern sovereignty is, like I said, when the kingdom existed, there was just subjects, and so that was pretty easy to think about sovereignty. The king was sovereign, no one else was. As we went into the modern period, largely with industrialization and what we call kind of capitalist democracy, individual rights and property rights became more important, and a lot of that was through contracts. The issue is that because contracts are voluntary, they don't apply to refugees and immigrants. And so sovereignty becomes less clear now. Who are the subjects? In pre-modern times, everyone was a subject. Now, in the modern time, it's not clear who's a subject and who's not. So if you look at the 14th Amendment, for example, it'll say subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Unfortunately, it does not define who the subjects of the jurisdiction are. And that's kind of the difficulty. Things have gotten even more complicated now in postmodern times as things have become more contested. And it seems that most people in this kind of confusion are associating power or sovereignty with the majority. But those are rules that the majority doesn't necessarily have to follow, but they want to force the minority to follow. And so you kind of have to decide out of all of these different options, now that we're no longer just subjects of the king, what you think would be the best form of sovereignty. And then you need to explain very clearly among all those choices. Lots of people like to say sovereignty should be with the people. You have to define who the people are. And so you want to look at a social science reading in a legal case and see, is it clear from those readings who the people are? Who do you mean? Again, it can't be everybody because that would be now subjects, unless you're willing to argue that we should go back into the monarchy system. If you think it should be with the majority, you have to explain why, and again, use a social science reading in a case that supports your opinion. Against minority harm means that you think this should be about equity, social justice, minority rights, gender rights, race rights. Right? There's lots of different examples, and that's where sovereignty should lie, that the decision should be based there. You could also think about it in the term that England or the United Kingdom thinks about it, which is anything that is passed by Parliament, which is Congress here in the United States, that should be sovereign. And then that's just interpreted by judges, or it is prescribed to judges, and you'd have to talk about that. And obviously the readings and the cases would apply, and you just use examples from there. Some of you might think that it should be with the police, or you think it should not be with the police. And so again, you'd want to use the readings to show why that would be the case. Like I said, you could argue it should be with a king, a queen, a dictator, a monarchy, an oligarchy. In other words, that you'd have people would be the rulers, and you would try to move away from the law being, or versions of the law and applications of the law as being the sovereign. You could also argue it should be with a religious organization. There are many people nowadays that seem to support that idea, at least in theory. Who knows if they want to follow that in their own lives, though. That might just be a way of pointing out problems in other people's lives. Or you could propose some other situation. The main thing here is once you've committed to one of these, nobody's going to be right. There's not one right answer, unless we were under the king, and then the king is sovereign, and that would be the right answer. But because we're not, we're in a postmodern society where there's lots of debate and disagreement. I'm not looking for you to be right. I'm looking to see, can you compare the chosen reading and case with your theory? Can you bring these three things together? This is a skill that you're supposed to be able to learn in this class. And so in the draft, I'm going to see how good you are at doing that, and then help you improve so that you'll get even better and better at it. The main thing is to use quotes and examples from the reading and from the case, and to clearly cite to those when you use them. That's the main thing I'm really looking for. So speaking of that, if you look at this from top left to right, you've got the guiding prompts. These are the things I'm looking for. And then on the left-hand side from top to bottom, I'm showing you what the grade explanation is. So, if you're just starting out and maybe you do this paper 2 days before it's due, you might get a D because you didn't develop the theory, you didn't address the issue, you copied and pasted stuff from the internet, it was pretty obvious, or what you said didn't really apply to a postmodern society, so you were talking about 1920 or something. The reading did not apply to your theory, or it contradicted your theory, so it wasn't clear, and you didn't use reasoning from the legal case, or you didn't seem to understand what the case was doing. Let's say that you took some time, but you were still struggling with the reading, and you didn't quite understand how to do this assignment yet, and so your draft is kind of incomplete, but you stated an opinion. You didn't put any support or evidence in it from the cases. This means you probably won't be able to evidence where sovereignty should lie. You might make a statement like it should lie with the people, but you don't define that. You don't say what that is. The reading didn't seem to really apply, and you didn't really seem to know how to apply the case, but you showed maybe a little bit how your idea was different than what they said in that case. That would be a C grade in that case. A B would be now you're kind of moving a little bit forward. You probably feel a little bit more confident about it. You know what you're trying to say. Your theory might be inconsistent or contradictory at this point in a draft. That's okay, because it's logically consistent. In other words, you made a good statement. It might not be exactly the way you think it is, and that's because you're really just starting to apply the readings and the legal case, and you're seeing that there's a little bit of a difference than how you might ordinarily think about this issue. So B's will probably be on the right track, but you just won't quite have put everything together, and it won't be quite as clear as possible. Your A would be this. If your theory of postmodern sovereignty is consistent with legal reasoning and interpretations, then you've given me a clear theory. If you argued or showed me how it would apply today, and you very clearly defined your terms, then it would be clearly stated to me. If the reading you chose was obviously related to your theory and you explained how, then that would be an A explanation. And then the legal case will use the same legal reasoning. So all four things will be consistent, and the paper will flow really nicely. Now, I'm not expecting, it's not impossible for you to get an A on the draft, especially if it's pretty clear and I think I know where you're going and I can just help you on those details. So the main point here is that you're going to get your grade before or your grade on the draft, and then you're now going to get feedback and you're going to improve that grade to get a better grade on your final draft. And this is also a way of helping you prepare for the final exam, and so all of these things kind of relate together. I'll be offering more workshops kind of like this after the drafts come in, and I can see where you're all at. And I don't want you to spend too much time on grammar or what some classes require as to how you're supposed to write, I guess. I'm really looking for your ideas, so feel free to speak with your own voice. Definitely use experience if that really gets your point across and it seems to really go well with the reading and the case. And feel free to change your reading and case. If you think you're going to do one reading or one case and then it doesn't seem to fit your theory and a different one does, then go ahead. And it wouldn't be the worst idea to go ahead and include that. Tell me you thought you were going to do one and then you chose another one, and this is why. That'd be a good way of showing me that you understand your own theory. So that's basically all you need to think about, and I think you'll do fine on the draft. The main thing is just getting some ideas down on paper, get it in so that I can give you some feedback, and then it's much easier to work from there.